Hello, everyone, and welcome to the GSMC Fantasy Sports Podcast. We are in the home stretch of today's show, and for our final segment, we are going to conclude our Euros fantasy team previews with my personal dark horse, one of my favorite teams in this entire tournament, the Danes of Denmark. So without further ado, let us get right into this segment. And the reason I am so high on the Danes, unlike some people, is just due to the emotional investment this squad seems to have. 1,100 days before their first Euros game of this tournament, Christian Eriksen faced his life. He went into cardiac arrest on the pitch, and he had to be brought back to life. And it was a very, very emotional moment for Denmark fans everywhere. And just the fact that he was able to get on the pitch just a couple of short months later and just be himself again, one of the most creative footballers in the world, is such a true comeback story, a true underdog story that I just can't get past. And that's why I love this Denmark team. They are so invested in bolstering their squad through that emotionality, that grit and physicality that Christian Eriksen showed as he was fighting for his life, the 2020 Euros. And so that is why I respect them as a team. I really hope and pray that they go far now with Christian Eriksen back in the squad. And I truly believe that my underdogs can be your underdogs as well in terms of fantasy and in real life on the pitch. So let's just get into the fantasy players who I am looking at for this squad. Now, this may be a more new-look Denmark squad from the Euros. Obviously, they have played a game already. Kind of a weird draw against Slovenia, where their lineup may not have been what people expected to see of them. Not many of the players that starred for them in the 2020 Euros in that lineup. So, as you can see, there might be a bit of experimentation in that squad. But still, I want to highlight some players who I believe are going to be stars for you in your fantasy squad, starting off with the man himself, Christian Eriksen. At 7 million euros, I believe that he is going to be one of the best players at this tournament, should Denmark at least get out of the group stages. And so, just looking at his qualifying campaign for Denmark, 1 goal and 3 assists in qualifying, 3.5 key passes, so he's going to be pulling the strings like Geppetto in that midfield for the Danes. Just so glad to see him back. Obviously got a goal in his first game back in the international stage for Denmark since that harrowing moment. So just look for Christian Eriksen, now that he's back in this team, to just revitalize this squad, give them a new energy. Should they play more younger and experienced players, he is going to be the leader to rely upon. And so Christian Eriksen could be a fantastic addition to your Euros fantasy squad. I know I would want him in mine. Now let's look at the rest of their attack. Their attack is much younger than it has been in recent years. They've gone from Guy and Yusuf Palsson, who was just one of those reliable target men, to a young man in Rasmus Højlund, who, while struggled to get going domestically, had streaky games there domestically for Manchester United in his first full season with them. I think for Denmark, he is going to really shine. His just ability to move between the lines at pace, connect well with his midfield, understanding his partnership with Jonas Vind, who we'll talk about later in this segment, can really help. In qualifying, he showed his talent, his untapped potential with 7 goals and 1 assist. So look for Rasmus Højlund, if Denmark goes far, to contribute more and more to this team. I think he's going to have a little bit of growing pains growing into this tournament, but he could be one of the young stars to watch on the international stage, especially for a Denmark team that wants to build around their previous success in this tournament. Now, let's look at his running mate and partner, Jonas Vind, who is also an incredible young player. 11 goals and 1 assist for club this year. So just goes to show that Denmark really truly believe in this young partnership up top. They really believe that they can build off of the experienced midfield that they have behind them. So Jonas Vind also had a lovely assist for that Christian Eriksen goal, their first Euros goal of this tournament. So Jonas Wind just goes to show he's not all goals. He can score. He can assist. And I think that he could be a huge backup option for you off the bench for your Euros fantasy squad. Now let's transition more to their defense. Now the Danish defense does have a couple of steady hands on Andreas Christensen. But the guy who I'm really looking out for had a breakout Euros campaign. Shocked that he didn't get a big money move after that Euros in Joachim Mæhle. He truly is one of those guys who can do everything for Denmark in that back line. At the left back position at $5.5 million. A bargain in my opinion. He had 2.8 ball recoveries per game in qualifying. So look for Joachim Mæhle to truly be one of those guys who's not just a force defensively, but in the past Euros, he really added to the Denmark attack, a huge part of crossing balls into the box, getting assists, really helping that young, experienced squad, sans Christian Eriksen, advance in that tournament. I'm looking for him to have a huge tournament, especially as we get into the knockout stages, should Denmark be there. I'm really thrilled that I get to mention Joachim Mæhle. He's one of my favorite breakout players of last tournament, and I wish him well in this one. Now let's look into more of bench options for this Denmark team, shall we? In Pierre-Emil Højbjerg. Now, Pierre-Emil Højbjerg is an interesting player because for the past couple of seasons with Spurs, people can say that he had been one of the best Premier League midfielders, and so now that he's in Ange's system, he kind of declined, not necessarily playing as much as he wants, kind of grumbles about a big money move for him. But in a Danish kit, I think that Pierre-Emil Højbjerg shines because he doesn't necessarily have to play with a bunch of pressure on his back. He knows he has Christian Eriksen to partner with, and he steps into more of that defensive midfielder role that best suits him. Recovering balls, progressing them to Christian Eriksen, kind of being the quarterback for this Denmark team, if you will, and kind of really pulling the strings from defense to the midfield. Just knowing that he can rest easy a little bit and not have to be one of the huge forces that he's been for Spurs over the past couple of years. And now that he's kind of wanted to transition to another team, I think that Pierre-Emil Højbjerg, the pressure's off him, and look for him to be one of those dominant defensive midfielders, not known for his goals or assists, but can bag a couple. So just keep him in mind as a nice little bench option. And last but not least, for Denmark, another guy who I really loved as a breakout player this last tournament, a guy who you should really look out for, especially in terms of long-range goals, his set-piece prowess, and just his ability to strike a ball so well, Mikkel Damsgaard. He did not start in that game against Slovenia, which kind of surprised me because of his abilities on the wing. Just a tricky player to defend, wins a lot of set pieces, takes them himself, and he does them well. He's so efficient on the ball and off the ball. I think that if he plays this tournament, he's going to be a fantastic player, maybe even a starter on your Euros fantasy team. Fantastic Euros last year, had a huge free kick goal to get them to the semifinals against England actually in the semifinals. And so look for Mikkel Damsgaard to be one of those guys who, should he play a lot of minutes for this Danish team that wants to kind of transition, I think Mikkel Damsgaard is going to be a star at this Euros. Now, in terms of where I think they'll get to in this tournament, I'm just really picking them for their emotional talent, their ability to harness their emotions no matter how down or up they're feeling, and take that with them into every single game and just play with the intensity and passion that they deserve. They are a more direct team. They don't necessarily have that level of creativity. They're more known for their IQs and well-roundedness, just knowing where everyone's going to be on the pitch, and that's why I love them so much. They build from the back well. They don't necessarily play enjoyable football, but they have fantastic moments in them. So I do believe that this can be a quarterfinals team at best. I think that they have a weird group that I think that they're going to progress from. But right now, I do believe that Denmark right now does not have enough talent to get back to the semifinals. I think that was an emotional roller coaster for them 4 years ago. And right now, while they do have the players and they have a healthy Christian Eriksen, I just think that right now there are more teams rising around them that are falling. And so that's why I think that Denmark will only get to the quarterfinals, but they will have a nice run in them. And I truly wish the best for them, and for Christian Eriksen especially. But that should just about do it for this edition of the GSMC Fantasy Sports Podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed this show. Hope you enjoyed the incorporation of fantasy football. It is going to be a fantasy football heavy week this coming week. But, as always, do remember to like, follow, and subscribe to the show. I've been Chris Shepard. This has been the GSMC Fantasy Sports Podcast, brought to you as always by the GSMC Sports Network. We will be back tomorrow for another edition of the show, better than ever.